What's up everyone, Troy here. We are playing Twilight Struggle. This is a game on Steam. It's based on a board game. It's only $15 US, and I just grabbed it because it actually looks pretty cool. I haven't played it yet, so there's no active games. And we'll jump straight into the tutorial and let's see what it's about. Actually, I know what it's about. I'm just being facetious. It's a game about the Cold War. The game is played over 10 turns. To win, you need to get to 20 victory points or end up with more points than your opponent once the last turn is over. Its tutorial play as the United States and your opponent will play as the USSR. At the start of each turn, each player will be dealt a hand of cards. For the first turn, you get 8. Each card has an operations point value, which represents the card's strength. The text on the card describes the effect that occurs when the card is played. So this is the Marshal card. Its operation value 4 allows play of add 1 US influence in each of 7 non-USSR controlled Western European countries. Some cards have an event for the US only. Some have a USSR only. And some have a neutral event that can be used by either player. Headline phase. Both players will select an event card to headline. First phase of the turn is called the headline phase. Each player will secretly choose one card to play. A good choice here is the Marshal plan. Play Marshal plan as your headline event. To play it, click and drag the card to drop from... What the fuck was that? To play it, click and drag the card from your hand. Drop it onto the headline card banner that appears in the center of the screen after you start the drag. Pale. So what it's basically saying, I believe, is that I placed that and I've counteracted what they've dropped. The USSR has chosen ComCon for their headline event. Since the operations point value of Marshal Plan 4 is higher than ComCon, your first event, your event will be played first, unlike my reading. Marshal Plan allows you to place 7 influence onto the board. You may place this influence into any country in Western Europe that the USSR doesn't control, but each country may only gain 1 influence. Europe is divided into 2 sub-regions. Country in Eastern Europe are shaded dark and purple on the map. Eastern Europe is light purple. Australia, wrong country. I love Australia. Austria and Finland are considered to be in both Western and Eastern Europe, so they are shaded both colours. Sneaky. Place 1 influence in Turkey. Pale. Notice your influence in Turkey has changed to a blue background. This indicates that how you control the country. This indicates that you now control the country. This is because there's enough US influence in the country to match the stability number for Turkey. Pale. Each country has a stability number. If the amount of influence you have in a country exceeds your opponent's influence by at least the stability number, then you control the country. So that makes sense. So in order for them, if they were 4, I'd have to be 4 more, so I'd have to be 8 in West Germany. I'm getting this. Oh, you're just going to show an example. Well, la-di-fucking-da. No control matched, needs more control, exceeds opponent. Place 1 influence in Greece by clicking in the highlighted country. 1 in Italy. 1 in West Germany. 1 in France. 1 in Belgium. Okay. So it's ye olde names. Place influence in Spain, Portugal. Now the effect of the Marshal plan is complete. Anytime a card is played for the event or for operations points, it is put into the discard pile afterwards. However, Marshal plan has an asterisk next to the event title. This means if the event is played, it is removed from the game instead. So this card is burnt. Don't get to choose it in another round. Whenever the draw pile is out of cards, this card pile will be reshuffled to form a new draw pile. If a card is removed from the game, it won't be included in the reshuffle. After Marshal plan is removed from play, your opponent will play ComCon. That's placed with an influence in Eastern Europe, so the opponent has added 1 influence in Austria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Romania. Here, and here. ComCon is also an asterisk next to the event title, so it will be removed from play after the event is finished. After both players have headlined their headline card, I just read that twice, the headline phase is over. The next phase is action rounds. The players will alternate playing one card each for 6 action rounds. The USSR always takes the first action round because they're motherfucking greedy. So they're playing the Indo-Pakistani War. Playing a card during an action round requires the player to choose either to play the card for its event or its operations value. In this case, USSR wants to prove the influence on the maps of the card, so they choose to play the card for operations points and use the op points to place influence. When playing a card for op points, it contains your event or a neutral event, then the event text is not played. When operations points to place influence, you may only add influence to adjacent countries. So because they're here, they can go here, or because they're here, they can go here, but they can't go to UK. The USSR wishes to add an influence in Italy. This is allowed because they already have influence in Austria. Normally adding one influence to a country costs 1 operations point. However, if your opponent already controls a country, it costs 2 operations points to place 1 influence. So because we own Germany, they would have to put 2 to get 1. Since you control Italy, the USSR uses the 2 op points from Indo-Pakistani War to place 1 influence Italy, and then the action round is complete. The Indo-Pakistani War was used for the operations point, so it will be placed in the discard, which means it can be reshuffled later. So far it's pretty straightforward, and I didn't even know this was a board game, but it seems pretty cool, because I imagine a lot of the fiddly stuff has now been taken over by the computer. Now the US gets their first action round. You have some cards, but 3 of them have events associated with your opponent. So that one here, here, and here. When you play these cards for the operations points, you also have to allow your opponent to play the associated event. Managing the situation when you have your opponent's card in hand is a big part of Twilight Struggle. There are currently several areas of concern on the map. One possibility is to strengthen your position in the Middle East. When you play a card for operations points, you may use those points to attempt a coup. Let's try that now. When you attempt a coup, you spend all of the operations points on one card and target a country where your opponent has influence. The lower the stability number of the country, the more likely the coup attempt will succeed. When you play your opponent's event, you will get to decide if the event is played before or after you use the operations event. Just making up words now. In this case, we'll play Fidel, and we'll choose to use the op points first. Click and drag Fidel into the coup. Pow. Now we're choosing the target country for the coup. Syria is a good choice since its stability number is low. Select Syria by clicking the highlighted country. Before you attempt, you'll be shown a summary of the possible outcomes. The coup strength is determined by rolling a 6-sided die and adding the card's operations points. The coup is double the stability number of the country target. Since Syria has a stability number 2, the coup defense is 4. If the coup strength is greater than the coup defense, the coup attempt is successful and your opponent must remove influence equal to the indifference between those values. Click to re-roll, or roll once. So we rolled a 4, it's equivalent to that, which means they have to remove their influence, which we get a point. Oh, sorry, that plus our 2 operations points, so we've got 6, which is more than the coup defense of 4. You succeeded by a margin of 2, but your opponent only has 1 influence in Syria. The remaining difference is instead used to add your influence to the country, so because we got 2 points, we removed their 1 and we added our 1. Syria's left with 0 and 1 US influence. Each turn, to avoid a victory point penalty, both players must conduct military operations. Coups add to your military operations for the turn. You gain the number of operations point used for the coup attempt, so you now have 2 mil points. At the end of the turn, if you have fewer mil points than the DEFCON status, you'll lose the difference in victory points, so you need to have either gain 3 or more mil points or lower the DEFCON status before the turn ends. Now that you've finished using the operations point for your coup attempt, your opponent gets to play the Fidel event. 3 influence has been added to Cuba by the event, and the USSR now controls a country in Central America. Used Fidel for the operations, but your opponent played the event. Since Fidel has an asterisk next to the event title, it will be removed from the game. Sneaky. So this is making a lot of sense now. I've seen people play it. Haven't actually gone for the tutorial, played the game myself, so I was dubious about some of how the mechanics worked, but it's making sense now you played the tutorial. The USSR gets to play their second action round in the turn. Your opponent chooses to play independent reds. Add sufficient US influence in either Yugoslavia, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, or Czechoslovakia to equal USSR influence. So because they've chosen to play that for the 2 points, they place 1 influence in Iran and France. As an event associated with the US, after they use the operations point, we can take advantage of the card now. So now we can match the USSR influence in any of 5 different countries, but each of those countries currently only has 1 USSR influence. So if they had go away. Most scoring in Twilight, I'll show you in a second. Most scoring in Twilight Struggle comes from the scoring cards. You currently have 1 in your hand. Europe scoring. Scoring cards must be played during the same turn that you draw them. So by the end of the round, we must get rid of these. It's still in your hand after all action rounds have been played a turn, you'll immediately lose the game. When played, Europe scoring gives points to either side based on their strength in the region shown on the card. Battleground versus non-battleground. Strength in the region is primarily driven by battleground countries. Battleground countries have a red background behind their country name. Non-battleground have green. Or a non-darker colour, apparently. First, the scoring card shows the victory points earned for controlling more countries than your opponent. To qualify for president, you only need to control at least 1 country. So, before I go on to this part, this is what we did before. That card we played, we get to add the influence equivalent to what they've got, and because they had influence in Yugoslavia, and that was one of the countries, we could add 1. If there were 3, we would have added 3. But we couldn't, because they didn't, so we shan't. Currently, the US controls 5 countries in Europe. UK, West Germany, Italy, Greece, and Turkey, so you would qualify for presence and gain 3 victory points. The USSR controls 2, so they would also qualify for 3. To qualify for domination, you controlled more total countries and more battleground countries in the region than your opponent. In addition, you must control at least 1 non-battleground countries. The US controls more countries in Europe, but you each have 2 battlegrounds, so neither player has domination. West Germany and Italy, and Germany and Poland. So if we had domination we've had France as well, we would have domination. To qualify for control, you need to control more total countries and control all of the battleground countries in the region. For most regions, control will grant a large number of points. However, Europe is special. If you control Europe when your scoring card is played, you immediately win the game. Each player is granted 1 victory point for each battleground. Currently you have controlled 2 battlegrounds, so you'll gain 2 VP with the 3 points for presence. Finally, some regions have countries that are adjacent to the superpower countries. Each country that control adjacent to their enemy's superpower is worth 1 additional. So that would be Romania, Poland, and Finland. Romania, Poland, and Finland are adjacent, but you do not have control of these. Canada is the only country in Europe adjacent to Europe. Is the only country in Europe adjacent to the US. That's not Europe. Okay, so it doesn't control, so there's no victory points. That confused me because that made not word sense. Adding up your score for your current state of the Europe will grant you 5 VP, 3 for presence, 2 more for battleground. The USSR will also gain 5 VP for presence and 2 for battleground countries. Final result. Europe's scoring advantage, well, victory points would remain at 0. Since you have to play Europe's scoring during the turn, you want to gain as many points as possible in it, and domination of the region is the best way to do that. France is the last remaining. It's the key to domination. You could attempt a coup since your opponent has influence, but the highest ability, number 3, in France makes that a risky play. The safest route is to use one of your operations card with higher operations points. Click and drag US-Japan Mutual Defense for operations points. Place 3. You control France and qualify the domination in Europe. However, the USSR will have an action round to respond before they have a chance to play the Europe scoring. You still have one in operation left. Let's place it in Lebanon. Vietnam Revolts. Add 2 USSR influence in Vietnam. They've attempted the coup and failed. The dole was won. The die roll was 1, so add in the 2 op points gets a coup strength of 3. This is less than the coup defense of 6. Double the stability of 3. That number there. So the coup attempt has failed. Any coup attempt in a battle country will automatically lower the DEFCON status by 1. Keep it close on the DEFCON status. If it reaches 1 during your action round, you immediately lose the game. As DEFCON status gets lower, more if the map becomes off limits to coup and realignment attempts. Now you're at DEFCON 4, Europe is restricted. You can click on DEFCON track at the top screen to see the status on the DEFCON. Your opponent's coup attempt also granted 2 military points at the end of the turn. Each player loses 1 victory point for each mil op that they are short of the DEFCON status. If the turn ended right now, both players would lose 2 victory points since you each have 2 mil ops and the DEFCON status is 4. You need to gain some more mil ops in order to get rid of that penalty. Your opponent used the Vietnam Revolts. Even though it has an asterisk next to the card, it will be placed in the discard pile. And we continue. So we need to get 2 mil points, which it tells you we've got 4 rounds remaining. It's now your 3rd action round. The Soviet coup in France has failed to break your domination, so you can only play Europe's card for big point rewards. Drag it in there. Non-battleground 3, 0, we win. Battleground 3, 2, we win. Adjacent 0, 0. Domination 10. Presence 3. So we should get 5 points. You'll gain 10 VP, 7 for domination over 3 battleground. Lewis to go 5, 3 for presence, 2 for battleground. Click the commit button. Power. Now there's our 5. 10 minus 5 is 5. As remove in favour, you will need 15 more points to win the game. Remove all US influence in Czechoslovakia and East Germany. Sleepy little sucker. It's now your 4th action round. The 3rd way in which you can use the operation points is to attempt realignment. For each op points you spend, you can make 1 roll to remove influence. Perhaps the new leader of Cuba might be amenable to some persuasion. Click and drag Olympic Games from your hand, drop it into the realignment. Select Cuba. For a realignment attempt, each player rolls 1 6-sided die. Whichever side rolls higher can remove the difference in influence from the country. Realignments can never add influence. The USSR gets 1 bonus to its roll because it currently has more influence. Each player will also get a 1 bonus for each country adjacent they control. Your superpower counts for this, so you get +1 for the US. Click the roll die button. You rolled a 4. Adding your 1 gives you a total of 5. Your opponent rolled a 3. Adding the 1 gives 4. You win by 1 roll, so the USSR drops from 1 influence. There we go. No longer control Cuba, but the present thing is you have still 1 more realignment attempt remaining. Let's use the 2nd roll against Cuba to see if we can remove the USSR. Click the roll die button again. And we rolled a 5. Adding your 1 gives a total of 6. Your opponent rolled a 2. Adding the 1 gives a total of 3. You won by 3, so the 2 are removed from Cuba. All the Soviet influence has gone from Cuba. Realignment attempts are less dramatic than coups, but can be just as important. The USSR is now pissed and destroys you with a bomb. No. So they've used the China card place influence in their 5th action round. What is a unique card? When they play, instead of going to this card pile, it goes to your opponent. The USSR starts the game with it and now has chosen to play it. This means you now control China, but it is the face down and unavailable for play. At the end of the turn, it will flip face up and you'll be able to play it on the next turn. Soviet plans in the Middle East continue. You hold Arab-Israeli war. Oh, okay, makes sense. A powerful event that could put the US position in the Middle East as a risk. Luckily, there's a way to avoid that event. The fourth and final way to which you may spend operation points is on a space race. So basically, if you don't like the card, let's fucking dump it. Gonna make one space race attempt each turn. Your current position on the space track will determine which card you may use. To advance the next play on the space race track, you need to play a card worth 2 or more op points and then roll between 1 and 3. Click and drag to the space race. Before you initiate a space race attempt, you may review the possible outcomes. You must roll between 1 and 3 on a 6-sided die to advance to the next space track. Click the dice. Will we be lucky? Oh, success. We wouldn't guess in a tutorial. So your space race attempt is successful. You advance 1 box on the space race track and gain the rewards listed on the track. In this case, you gain 2 victory points. The launch of the first man-made satellite into orbit is a success, and there is no war in the Middle East. For now. Now we have Containment. For the final USSR action in the turn, your opponents play Containment for 3 op points to attempt a coup on Iran. The die roll was 5, so adding the 3 op points gets a coup strength of 8. This is greater than the coup defense of 4, so the coup attempt was a success. Iran is a battleground country, so DEFCON status degraded to 3. Containment is a strong US event, but is best when played early in the game. The Soviets have greatly minimized this card by holding it until their final action round on the turn. It is removed from the game because its event was played, but you will only benefit from the effect of 1 action round. All further operations by AUS add 1 to the value. Bastards. This is your last action round. Before the end of the turn, you have 2 1 op points cards remaining. Playing one of them, thus the action round will be worth 2 op points due to Containment. So 1 and 1. Capture Nazi Scientist is a neutral event that will advance you 1 space on the space track. Romanian Abdication is a USSR event that will give your control of Romania if you play it for the operations points. Romania Abdication has an asterisk, so will be removed from the game. Sometimes it's better to accept the outcome of the event just so the opponent has fewer cards in the draw pile during the next later turn. Let's play Romanian Abdication, but this time we'll see an example how to allow your opponent to play the event first, and then you decide afterwards how to use the operation points. Click and drag. Pow. Trigger event. USSR has gained control of Romania. Now you may use the op points from Romanian Abdication. Click and drag Romanian Abdication again. Drop it into the Place Influence banner that appears. Thailand is a battleground country in Southeast Asia. It is usually a key country in Fight for Asia. You aren't allowed to place influence there now because you don't have influence in the adjacent country. Let's do something about that next. Place 1 in Europe, in Malaysia. Not Europe, because we got one in Australia. Pow. You now have influence into Thailand, but you still can't place influence there because you weren't adjacent at the start of this action. Instead, let's spread out into Southeast Asia. Let's go to Indonesia. Pow. At the end of the turn, military ops is checked against your DEFCON status. Your opponent has sufficient military operation points, but you only gain 2 mil op points this turn, and the DEFCON status of 3, you lose 1 victory point. Bastido. And then we start the next round. DEFCON is now at 4, goes back up 1, back to headline phase. Turn 2, add the DEFCON status improves by 1. Each player draws enough cards to have 8 cards in hand. You have 1, the China card is flipped over and now available to play. You have 9 cards. This turn you would choose one of them for the event, headline event, and you will need 6 of them for your action rounds. You should have 2 cards left at the end. There are only 6 cards left in the draw piles. This card pile will be reshuffled. Europe scoring was played last turn, so you know that Asia scoring and Middle East scoring will both appear. This ends the Twilight Struggle overview tutorial. You may play on from this position. Try and see what you can do to address the expanding Soviet presence in the Middle East, or spread your own influence in Asia. The world is your stage and the stakes can be higher. Good luck, Mr. or Madame President. And that, in a nutshell, is Twilight Struggle. So, what we'll do is, we will continue next time, where we'll actually start a game from start. We'll do a complete playthrough. I don't know how many videos it'll be, but the goal is to win. Whether we get to round 10 or whether we take an early victory, we will beat the USSR. Then we'll flip, and then we will be the USSR. The hunter will become the hunted, or something similar, whatever that means. So until next time, guys, that is Twilight Struggle. Check it out. It's a pretty cool game. It's just a very cool game to watch someone else play, because they have to struggle with the decisions. But anyway, until next time, I'll catch you later.